All right, today we're diving into something that feels like it's been pulled straight from a sci-fi movie, programmable matter. I'm talking about the science, the real science, behind objects that can literally change their shape whenever you want them to. I mean, just think about that for a second. An object in your room, it's not static, it's not fixed. It's fluid, it's adaptable. Now, this isn't just some cool thought experiment. Nope. This is the core promise of a technology that could completely, fundamentally change the physical world around us. So, the official name for this wild idea is Claytronics. And the name itself kind of gives you a hint, right? Think of it like digital clay. It's the science of building things out of millions, and I mean millions, of tiny, little, independent robots that all work together to form one larger, solid object. An object that can change its shape. Now, if all of this is sounding kind of familiar, it's because, well, you've definitely seen it before. Think about the liquid metal villain from Terminator 2, or maybe the holodecks in Star Trek. But the question is, where did the actual science for this stuff begin? Well, the whole journey really starts with a theoretical spark back in 1959. The famous physicist Richard Feynman basically imagined building things atom by atom. Now, fast forward a few decades to the 80s and 90s, that theory starts to take its first kind of clunky physical steps with these big modular robots that could rearrange themselves. But the real breakthrough, that came in the early 2000s. That's when researchers at Carnegie Mellon University pulled all this work together into a project they called Claytronics, and they came up with the core idea of the Catom. Okay, so we've got the sci-fi dream and we've got the history. But how in the world could this actually work? Let's get into the nitty-gritty, the mechanics of how Claytronics is supposed to tick. It really all boils down to this one single component, the Catom. That's short for claytronic atom. You can think of these as the microscopic robots that act like, well, like the pixels of our physical world. Millions, maybe even billions of them all come together to create a single object. And what's just incredible is that every single one of these microscopic Catoms is a complete self-contained robot. Seriously, think about it. Each one has a processor, that's its brain, running the commands. It's got a power source, its heart, to keep it going. It uses little actuators, basically tiny electromagnets as its muscles to connect and move around. And it has a communication system, its voice, so it can talk to all its neighbors. So how does a solid object actually shapeshift? Well, it's this beautifully simple three-step dance that just gets repeated millions of times over. First, a Catom detaches its magnetic bond from its neighbor. Then, it moves. It kind of slides or crawls over the surface of the other Catoms to a new position. And finally, it reattaches, forming a new magnetic bond and locking into place. It's this coordinated crawl happening all over the object's surface that lets a chair literally look like it's melting into a table. Okay, I know what you're thinking. This sounds absolutely incredible. So if the concept is so clear, why don't we have this stuff yet? Well, the engineering challenges are, to put it lightly, monumental. It's time for a little reality check. First up, you've got the sheer problem of scale. For programmable matter to actually feel like a solid object and not a pile of beads, each Catom has to be smaller than a grain of sand. We're talking less than a millimeter wide. Now try to imagine manufacturing billions of them, and remember, each one is a complete little robot. That level of microfabrication is still years, probably even decades away. Next up, you have the gigantic power problem. I mean, how do you fuel billions of active robots all at once? You can't exactly run wires to each one, and if you tried to beam wireless power into a dense block of them, you run into a massive side effect: heat. Even a tiny bit of inefficiency multiplied by a billion cat arms could cause the whole object to literally cook itself from the inside out. Solving that energy to heat problem is a huge, huge barrier. And finally, there's the software, which might just be the biggest hurdle of them all. See, you can't have one central brain telling every single Catom what to do. The amount of information would just be astronomical. No, you need distributed intelligence. Each Catom has to make its own tiny decisions based on a shared goal and what its neighbors are doing. Trying to program a swarm of 1 billion individuals to act in perfect harmony, that is a computational problem of almost unimaginable complexity. But you know what? Let's push those hurdles aside for a moment. Let's daydream. Let's imagine a world where scientists have actually solved all these problems. What would that world even look like? What are the real game-changing applications we could expect? Well, for starters, it would change how we interact with our devices. Imagine your flat phone screen, and then suddenly it sprouts a physical, tactile keyboard. Or a joystick just rises right out of the surface when you launch a game, giving you actual physical feedback. No more tapping on flat glass. And that idea just expands out into our living spaces. Think about it. You wouldn't buy a bed and a desk and a chair. You'd just buy one block of programmable matter that reconfigures itself into whatever you need whenever you need it. Your entire room could transform with a simple voice command. In the world of manufacturing, this is an absolute revolution. Instead of a factory packed with specialized tools, you just have a vat of Catoms. Need a wrench? Poof! It assembles one. Done with that, and now you need a drill? It just disassembles the wrench and forms a drill. We're talking about the ultimate universal tool. And the potential goes even further into really delicate fields like medicine. Picture a surgeon using a tool that can navigate through the body as a tiny, thin filament. And then, once it gets to the right spot, it reconfigures itself to perform an incredibly precise procedure. This would totally revolutionize minimally invasive surgery, reducing harm and making things so much safer for patients. But look, a technology this powerful doesn't just reshape objects, it reshapes society. And like any truly disruptive force, it's a double-edged sword. It forces us to stop and confront some pretty big questions. On the one hand, the promise is just incredible. You've got ultimate reusability, which means way, way less waste. You have perfect personalization for every single object. And you could have hugely enhanced accessibility for people with disabilities. But the other side of that coin is just as serious. It could cause massive job displacement in manufacturing. It would create all new security risks if it were weaponized. And it raises major privacy concerns if these little Catom swarms are also collecting data. These are the kinds of trade-offs we're going to have to figure out. And that really brings us to our final thought here. Claytronics isn't just a cool gadget. It represents a fundamental shift in how we relate to the physical world, blurring that line between hardware and software, between what's static and what's dynamic. So the real question it leaves us with is a big one. If we can program matter itself, what part of our reality is next?